Wild Arms, the PlayStation 1 version. Wild Arms as an IP is apparently owned by Sony. You know, Sony, the PlayStation owners and all that. They own the rights to the IP of Wild Arms, which means, to my knowledge, they have the rights to host all Wild Arms content if they ever so chose to do so. For example, if they owned a digital storefront, for example, if they owned a digital storefront, like say a PlayStation 3 digital storefront, and by the time this digital storefront launched, they would have the rights to host the entirety of the Wild Arms series. Wild Arms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the Wild Arms 1 remake for the PlayStation 2. They would have the rights to host all of those titles onto their digital service. And who knows, at one point maybe those games were on there, but then who knows, maybe Sony at one point in time decided, you know what, we don't want to make money on these titles anymore. We don't want to make any money on them. So we're going to delist them. And so they had delisted Wild Arms 3, 4, 5, and the remake of Wild Arms 1, all on PS2 titles. They decided to delist them all because they don't want to make money on them. You know, they don't want to make money on them because, you know, it's a very savvy business decision. You see, it's very savvy. It's like, hey, you know this product that I'm capable of selling? I'm not going to sell it. I would rather not make money on it, so I'm not going to sell it. It's a decision that you can clearly make. Obviously, yes, you could make this decision, but I'm going to stop being sarcastic here and say that that is not a very wise decision. You see, normally, logically, if you had the ability to sell something and there were people willing to buy that something, sell it so that you can get money from the sale of the thing that you have the rights to sell. It's like movie streaming services and all that stuff. If you own the rights to the movie, put it up so that people can view it. You have the rights to do it. It's your film. It's like that SpongeBob meme, you know, like that SpongeBob meme. You have the guy in the big villain mask pointing at something and pointing at Patrick and saying, This is your movie. And Patrick's got the big logo of a film company on his face, and Patrick says, yeah, this is your name, your icon under the creators right here. This is you, right? And Patrick says, yeah, that's me. And then the villain goes, so you would have the rights to host this onto your streaming platform, and it wouldn't really cost you much to do that. And Patrick says, looks like it to me. And so you say, is it on your streaming service? And Patrick goes, nope. Yeah, that doesn't seem very smart, does it? Now listen, joking aside, at least Wild Arms 1 and 2 can be found on the PlayStation 3 PSN. I have no idea on the PS4 PSN. I don't think the PS4 PSN has PS1 classics available. They might have a few, but the PS3 was known for being the juggernaut king of PS1 and PS2 classics. The PS4 doesn't really have many of those. The PS5 shares the PS4 storefront. I don't understand why they still to this day don't want to use emulation for the PlayStation 3 so that they can combine the PlayStation 3 storefront onto the PlayStation 4 and 5 storefronts. And I honestly don't understand why they don't use emulation for the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2. They had already figured that out by the PlayStation 3 because that's how they run digital PS1 and PS2 games on their PS3 platforms. They run it through emulation. Even the newer PlayStation 3 models that no longer allowed you to play hard copy physical PS2 discs, you could still boot up PS2 digital games because they were playing it through emulation. So they obviously knew how to do this. They obviously knew how to make this work. They just chose not to do it because, you know, they don't make money on older games. Why should we have those available? We want you to, and then you go, well, you could clearly put these up on your digital storefronts. People will buy them, and you would make money. And they go, why would we want to do that? We can't do that. That would make us money. We don't want to do that. And so logic isn't necessarily something that a lot of this schmickle-backle works properly with. Logic often does not coincide with savvy business. Logic, you think it would, but in many cases it doesn't. It's often like how this big major platform decides to update their thing with a thing that most people don't like, and they pat themselves on the back saying, well done, this is a great update, and they're getting thousands of complaint emails and messages on Twitter that they're ignoring, going like, why did you do this? This is terrible, this is a horrible UI, and everybody just congratulating each other. They pulled out the champagne, they're drinking it, and they're going like, oh, they just love this, even while right outside the window everything is on fire. But Wild Arms is a fun game. I played Wild Arms 1 for the PS1 on the PS3, PSN. Obviously, you're looking at one of my pieces of paper indicating that this is a digital game. Yes, Wild Arms is still available as of the making of this video in the North American territory. You can get Wild Arms 1. Not the PS2 remake, just the PS1 original. You can get Wild Arms 1 and 2 and play them right now. If you wanted to play them and you looked at all these other storefronts, your Steams, your Goggles, and your Epic Gaggles, and your Xboxes, and your PlayStation 4 and 5 servers, your Switchy, Nintendo Switchy, and everybody goes like, nah, we don't have that game. Well, the PS3 does! So you can get it there, unless you want to spend $100. Maybe you have a lot of loose change. Maybe you got a lot of loose change. You got a lot of pennies saved up that you can buy Wild Arms physical for $100. That more power to you. You have more control over your game that way. So please do that if you have $100 to spend. When you could just buy this on the PS3, PSN for $5.99, you know, it's like $100, $5.99, $100, $5.99, physical copy, digital game, $100, $5.99. I know it's a tough decision. It's very tough, very, very tough. But I made this tough decision, and I chose $5.99. I chose the $5.99, and finally, backlog. It took a while. I had a big backlog. It took years to getting around to this, but I finally got around to Wild Arms. I finally got around to playing it, and it was a pretty fun experience. It really was. It had this big anime opening when you put in the game, like most JRPGs would do. They put like an anime opening, kind of like they're showing you an anime season opening, whatever, because that's just how a lot of JRPGs are. When you're playing the game, it's like playing a season of an anime in game format. It's wonderful. I love that. That's why I love JRPGs. The opening anime, the Wild Arms actually became an anime. You can actually watch the Wild Arms anime. I recommend doing that. It's pretty good. I need to get around to doing that myself. But that was a great opening, and then you get around to the actual gameplay, you know. You can load your game, you can do a new game, you can probably finagle with your settings after you start your new game. It's typical JRPG schmickle-mackle, right? So you start the new game, and you notice right away that the music kind of has like this Western vibe, but also has that classical retro JRPG vibe from the SNES era, Super Nintendo era. It's slightly kind of 3D a little bit, but it's a top-down village exploration like the classic JRPGs that I absolutely love. I love the top-down look. You have full-range movement in 8 cardinal directions, but you can't do like 360 range movement because there's no analog stick support. So you have to use the D-pad for that, which is fine, I guess. Where was I? Oh yeah, it's got like this little Western vibe to it. Probably because it has a Western vibe to it, and you open your game map world, your setting, the world setting, and you notice there's deserts all over the place. And you got the typical JRPG thing saying, "Oh, the world used to be great, now it's crap, and the world is dying, and things used to be amazing 1,000 years ago, but there was this big bad war against these bad guys, and we fought them alongside our awesome ultimate allies, basically some Tolkien crap back in the Second Age, the War of the Last Alliance, humans and elves joining forces against the orcs, and we beat them, and then the elves decided, hey, you know what, screw you guys, I'm getting him. And so they decided to leave the humans to their fates, to the dying world, instead of saying, hey, you know what, we live here too, we're gonna help you try to fix this. No, we're not gonna do that. No, let's leave. We're gonna go this way, and you can just stay here and die. And so and so the humans are stuck on a dying world called Filgaia. And the elves, which are called the Elus, it's pronounced Elus, but you're gonna, it's their pen and paper time, because it's a strange letter, strange word. We get L-W, yeah, that's W, and that's not a U, that's a W. You know, you see these big little, there you go, it's like a W. If that doesn't look, kind of looks like a butt, actually. So let's try that again. We're gonna big letters, there you go. Now you can see it. That's how they spell it, L's, but it's pronounced L. Ooh, the double O's, those are O's. L O's. So it looks like that, but that's how you sound it. That's how you pronounce it. L's. I just say L's. You know, like the letter L. L's. It's kind of how that sounds. I don't really like saying Elus. It's just kind of weird to say Elus, but they're called Elus. I'm gonna just keep saying L's. So there you go. So the L's is this awesome race of awesome people that can live for a very long time, because that's just how fantasy writers would often do this. Would often do these things. They would often make tons of alien races. Even science fiction writers do this too. They make all sorts of alien races, everybody. And because we hate our very short lifespans, we often make alien races or fantasy races. Everybody gets to live longer than humans, because that's how we get to live vicariously through fictional races that don't exist, and say, hey, I hate dying at age 80, I hate looking old at age 80, here's an L. At age 800, they look like they're ready for puberty. That's just how it works. We hate our very short lifespans. We want to live longer. We want to live to 300, not 30. And I don't blame them. I would love to live to 300, so long as I get to look young for 300 years and not be an old, wrinkly, decrepit wizard man. But being a wizard's actually pretty cool, I guess. So long as I was really physically fit, you know, maybe you're old and you look like Gandalf, but you're physically fit. Even though you look like Gandalf, you can run the track, you could do your slashies, you know. Gandalf could fight with a sword. He fought with a sword in the mines of Moria, and he fought it at the Battle of the Black Gate. He fought with a sword. Glamdring is what the sword is called. The big foe hammer. And, you know, he was an old man, but he was very spry. And if he could do that at age 3, I'm going off topic, aren't I? Anyways, with your Wild Arms, it's typically like that. The big alliance with humans and elves, and a third race called the Guardians. The Guardians are basically Espers, Final Fantasy VI. One thing to notice right away is that Wild Arms is very much inspired by games like Final Fantasy VI, games like Chrono Trigger. Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger pretty much are like, I think, like the two big ones. There's a little bit of Zelda in there. So put a little bit of Zelda, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, combine that into this meshmaggle, and you get Wild Arms. A little bit of Trigun, the anime Trigun, you know, Trigun. Put a little bit of Trigun in there, and you get Wild Arms. You get Wild Arms. Our main character is a silent protagonist. which immediately I disagreed with this. I completely disagree with the idea of a silent protagonist in game. Like, I don't mind silent protagonists, I really don't. In certain games it really works. In games like Alundra, I loved the silent protagonist idea because it gives you a more personal connection to the character of Alundra, right? Your reactions, you can use your finagled fancy imagination to say those are Alundra's reactions. Well, then not so with Rudy, okay? You notice right away that Rudy technically does talk, he just doesn't have text boxes. What does that mean? It means other characters claim that Rudy's talked to them plenty of times, and they will often tell you through their text boxes what Rudy is feeling. They will tell you how Rudy is feeling. They will tell you what Rudy wants. They're like it's like Rudy is Kenny, and he's speaking like, and they're interpreting. Like Stan and Kyle are often interpreting what Kenny is saying. Nobody knows what the heck Kenny is saying. This is South Park stuff, by the way. And people are trying to interpret something that Kenny is saying because nobody knows what Kenny is saying, but Stan and Kyle do. So they would repeat the muffled stuff in normal speech. That's what they do here. So, but there's no muffled speech here, obviously. It's just Rudy being a silent protagonist. But then you would have a character saying, "Oh, so that's how you feel about this. I did blah 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 blah. You're such a very caring and compassionate person, Rudy, and you get to learn more about people the more people say how Rudy feels. You don't actually get to see how Rudy. You can notice right away that this doesn't work as a silent protagonist because this character clearly has his own motivations. He has his own feelings, and he's often said things to other people. It feels like the silent protagonist thing was a late-stage development idea, because there were a couple actual lines that we see Rudy have. He's got one line in the beginning of the game where you get to control the two other characters who do have text boxes, who do have lots of personality and dialogue. Jack von Budes, which is a translation error, because you see it's English how the Japanese would say. They for example, let me pull out my more pen and paper, right? And let's say we write out the name Jack van Budes, right? That's his name, Jack van Budes. Well, Van Budes. Van Brace. His name is Jack Van Brace. You know, like the little wrist guard, Van Brace. That's the name. But you see, the burr, and even with the D, the two, consonants? The combinations of many consonants together like this don't really exist in the Japanese language. So, oftentimes we have this type of thing where we have a consonant followed by the R consonant, like DR, or the BR sound. It would often sound like DUR, or BUR. So, instead of saying Van Brace, it's Van Budes. And so the direct translators, the translators of the game, they keep saying, "Oh, it's Jack Van Budes," and they say, "Oh, Jack Van Budes? No, dumbass, it's Jack Van Brace." And they go, "Oh, Jack Van Budes." And then they code it in, they translate it in, and that's how he sounds. It's the same thing with Final Fantasy VII. The whole thing with Aerith and Aerith. Maybe with the whole thing, they would go like Arisu. They would say, "Oh, his name is Arisu." Because, the TH sound, the TH sound, maybe that's not exactly a thing in the Japanese language, so they're trying to make that sound, but they end up saying arisu. And so maybe they just drop the U part and say, oh, that's what you mean, isn't it? And they go like, no, this is what we mean. Oh, that's what you mean. Oh, this is what... All right, we're going to put this into the PS1 game. And we're going to start a 30-year-long debate between Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 7 purists who played this game on the PlayStation 1 and everybody else who came after them who played the compilation titles and all that other stuff, where we get the proper spelling for Aerith's name. And it's a whole thing. It's this whole thing. So Jack Van Brace is actually Jack Van Brace. And, you know, maybe Van Brace kind of makes him sound a little bit more sophisticated. He sounds like a sophisticated person, even though he actually isn't a sophisticated person. So Jack Van Brace actually fits better. He's not exactly a sophisticated high society person. He's just, but it's a decision. So they're certainly capable of making that translation decision. So we have that character, Jack Van Brace, and then the third character is called Cecilia, and that is Cecilia. Right there. There's your characters, and the other guy's name is Rudy. So Rudy. Right? So your silent protagonist is Rudy. Then we have the female character, Cecilia. And then we have Jack Van Brace. And at the beginning of the game, you get to do 3 series of prologue chapters, solo, with each of the 3 characters. And we introduce Rudy. He's in the village called Surf Village. And this is where he's been taken under the mayor's wing. He's been living there. He's a vagabond wanderer. After his grandfather died, the mayor took him in, and he's been living in this village. He's been helping out. Everybody loves him. It's a great time. And so Rudy ends up learning that this kid has gone off to the Berry Cave, and he's trying to get a berry, a holy berry, to save his father who has taken ill. And so Rudy feels bad for that, so he goes to help the kid out, right? He goes to help the kid out. He goes to the berry cave to find the kid, because, you know, nobody else wants to enter the berry cave. It's forbidden to enter the berry cave, even to go rescue person who is ready to the berry cave, you know. So you go into the berry cave. He goes in there to try to find the kid. He finds the kid. And then he finds this big beastie, right? He finds the holy berry, right? He picks up the holy berry, but then the big beastie revives. And then we learn that the holy berry was actually put there to keep the big beastie away. Now, Rudy couldn't have been expected to know this. He's a wanderer. He's not savvy to the village's ways, but these are very primitive people. You have to understand, they're people of the land. The common clay of the new Filgaia. You know, morons. So, Rudy fights the big beastie. He saves the kid's life, and he ends up using what is called an arm. Now, what is an arm? An arm is something that connects to your shoulder that has a hand at the end of it. But that's not important right now. An arm in this game is just a gun. It's a gun. You know, arm, gun, arm, weapon, arm. Arm yourself. I have 2 of them. No! Get a gun. Arm yourself. And so, the arms in this are just guns, you know, and they're highly sophisticated 1,000-year-old relics of a lost age created by the elves. They were created by the elves, with humans helping out here and there, back in the olden days when everything used to be highly more advanced. You know the shtick here. You've played enough JRPGs now to realize that this is just how we do things. We like to play in a world that's decayed. It's terrible here. And things used to be so much better back in the good old days, right? We're being nostalgic for the good old days. Everything used to be so much better. Ancient societies, highly advanced things, lots of ruins to explore. It is a JRPG's paradise fun box that we have had hundreds that do the exact same thing, and we're never sick of it because it's always interesting. Archaeology, you know. JRPG and archaeology, they kind of go hand in hand. When you play and learn about all these lost civilizations, it kind of makes you want to learn about real lost civilizations. Rome, what about that? Let's learn about Rome. Well, Rome's not exactly a lost civilization. You know, we have all sorts of ruins of Rome that are still in use, buildings that are still in use today. The Parthenon, we get to go in there and all that good stuff. Well, how about the Hellenistic Greece? We still got some of those Greek things in place. But what about the lost Celtic Age? Now, that's a real lost civilization. We see these giant big mounds in the British Isles, and we go the ancient civilizations, settlers of this land. This thing was already there. Like, who put that thing there? Throughout the Dawn and all that good stuff, the Ireland, and it's that really scratches an itch, right? And that's what this gun is. It's a relic of the past, and Rudy seems to be able to use one. And these primitive people of Surf Village, well, they go like, well, we don't really like these things from the past. We're very superstitious about that thing. We're people of the land, the common clay of the new Filgaia. The Filgaia is the name of the planet. We're morons. So we don't want guns around here, arms around here. You use that thing to save the life of one of our villagers, and we're very grateful to you. And normally we would treat you as a hero, but instead we're going to banish you because we're morons. We're gonna banish you because we're morons. We're gonna banish you. So go away, Rudy. Go, leave the village. Never come back. And for the entire duration of the Wild Arms game, you are never welcomed back here. There is no side quest for Rudy to have to return to Surf Village to do some side quest to regain the respect of the villagers, and the villagers say, I learned something today. Shunning things of the past is very closed-minded, and my mind has been opened. We accept you, Rudy. Welcome back to the village. And everybody's all happy, and we feel so wholesome. We feel so very wholesome at that moment where people get to learn and their minds get to be opened. Well, that doesn't happen here. It happens in the remake, though. It doesn't happen in the original, though. So that's something to look forward to when you play the remake of Wild Arms 1 on the PS2. You get to play that. Eventually, you'll get around to returning to Surf Village, and Rudy will get the respect and adoration he deserves from these primitive people. Moving on. The second character here is Cecilia. That's the second one that I used. And Cecilia is... Actually, no, the second character I picked for the second prologue is Jack Van Brace. So I'm going to be using Jack Van Brace's story next. And Jack Van Brace's story is very short. He's a treasure hunter. He's just some vagabond treasure hunter. But if you pay attention, if you have the ability to use this very rare skill called critical thinking and context clues and putting two and two together, it's not four, but two and two is, context clue of what that is, And when you have the ability to do that, then you'll learn that if you're kind of not exactly a press start button right away type of person, then when you go to the title screen on Wild Arms and you wait through the anime opening, and then you wait on the title screen again, the screen fades, and then you get to see a flashback cutscene. A flashback cutscene roughly about 3 to 5 minutes long about the fall of the Kingdom of Arctica. You never get to see this cutscene in the actual game. This is the only way you get to see this story bit, which is canon to the game. This happens before the events of Wild Arms, years before the events of Wild Arms, like 10 years before the events of Wild Arms, I think. So you get this cutscene where the king's brother, the younger brother, the prince, he's not the king, I guess. The younger brother of the king is dead, and we have about 3 Fenrir knights. The Knights of Fenrir are the names of the knights, the holy big guard, personal guard of the king of the Kingdom of Arctica. Let me write that down so that every time I keep saying Arctica, you have something for me to point to every now and again. Arctica. Yeah, Arctica. The Kingdom of Arctica. We have the Kingdom of Arctica. It's a big north place, very cold. That's why it's called Arctica. It's, it's connected. It's Arctica. When they were developing a place, or they're developing this kingdom, when they were developing Wild Arms, you say, this place is very cold. This place is in a very northern climate. Very, very cold. What's a good name for a very cold northern kingdom? It's in the north, far north, in where we would normally call the Arctic Circle. What would be a good Arctica? Oh! And so they type in Arctica, and that's the name of the northern kingdom, the high, very cold place. So they go to Arctica, right? And in Arctica, we have the 3 Fenrir Knights. And one of them is called Garrett, and the other 2 die, so we don't need to worry about their names. And so one of them's name is Coldbird, though. I just wanted to mention that because I'm terrible with names, and I actually remembered his name, and I feel proud about that. And so we have the knight called Garrett, and the other knight called Coldbird, and the other guy who dies. 3 knights, and the younger brother of the king, who the king is dead, so the younger brother is now the king. And the 3 knights have taken the younger brother to safety, because the castle is being attacked by some bad guys. And so they go down this elevator to try to find a secret passage to get out. And a 4th Fenrir Knight shows up. Her name is Elmira. I think Elmira. She's got pink hair, and she has close connections with the knight Garrett. Garrett is very green. He's a very greenhorn. You can tell that he is the newest member, the youngest member of these 4 knights, the surviving knights. And then the bad guy's leader shows up. His name is Alzahead. Another name that you might... Alzahead. So Alzahead shows up, kills the nameless knight that I don't remember his name, leaving just Coldbird, Garrett, and Elmira left alongside the younger brother of the king. And so the younger brother cowers before the Alzahead and says, "I'll do anything you want, just spare my life." And Alzahead goes, "Nah," and he kills the younger brother, the king, leaving just Coldbird, Garrett, and Elmira left. And Mr. Coldbird decides to sacrifice his life so that Garrett and Elmira can escape to tell the world what happened to the kingdom of Arctica. And so they escape, and Coldbird dies. And then when they make it to the secret exit of Arctica Castle, Garrett gets outside, and Elmira stays behind and lowers the castle gates, locking Garrett outside. And Elmira says, "This is what courage is. Courage is the ability to protect the people that you love. I do not want you to die, Garrett. Go! Escape! Live!" And Garrett goes like, "You hypocrite. I don't want you to die either." But he's stuck on the other side of the door, so he can't really have too much of a say in this matter. And Alzahead shows up, Elmira dies, and Garrett escapes. It's some great background music's playing. Great music's playing. The music in this game is pretty good. Not as good as Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger or Xenogears or anything like that, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And so Garrett is seen running away from a burning castle in the snowy northern climate of Arctica. It's very great. It's an awesome cutscene. I definitely recommend you wait on the title screen to watch that cutscene. And if you know how to put context clues 2 and 2 together, and you look at the color of this character, of Garrett's hair, you'll notice that this sprite looks very similar to Jack Van Verdees's, and it's probably because they're the same character. Jack is now a much older vagabond wanderer, the last survivor of the kingdom of Arctica, and instead of leading an army to return to reclaim Arctica, it's not really logical to do that. You know, there's these invading forces are called demons, though they're kind of more like cyborg aliens from outer space. But we're gonna just call them demons. That's what the game calls them, so I'm just gonna call them demons. They call themselves demons, but that's just because that's what the translator decided to write in. And so they're demons from outer space, robot demons from outer space, and they have come to Filgaia to settle it, to take it over, because they want to have a new place, because their place is dead. They need a new home. And so they've come to take over this place, but then they go like, you know, this place is inhabited. And then one of the other demon leaders says, well, you know what happens when all the life people that inhabit a planet die? What happens to the planet then? And the other guy goes, I don't know. What happens to the planet? And the other guy says, it becomes uninhabited. And then we can inhabit it ourselves. And so, with that genius putting 2 and 2 together isms on that out of the way, they decide to conquer Filgaia and take all life out of there so that they can feel good about inhabiting an uninhabited planet. And they're very powerful people. They're very, very powerful cyborg robot aliens from outer space that are called demons. And so Jack decides, I'm probably better served training, honing my skills, and becoming a treasure hunter to find lost relics of a bygone era that are probably far more powerful than whatever we have modern day, so that I can become stronger, and then I'll go back and destroy them all. So Jack starts by going to this lost temple. It's called the Memory Temple, and your intro to his character is exploring the temple. And when they get to the bottom of the temple, they see a hologram of an L. The L. You see a hologram of an L saying, "Don't awaken Lolitia. Don't awaken him. It's a very disruptive thing. Don't awaken. Very powerful." And Jack goes like, "Powerful? Well, I want to go find Lolitia." And so that he goes to the castle of Adelaide. That's another word that I have to type in, ADLHYD here. I usually pronounce it as Adelaide, like Adelaide, Adelaide. That's what I can pronounce that as. So it's Adelaide. So he goes to the castle of Adelaide to try to find out more about Lolitia. And that's where Rudy ends up going as well. Rudy ends up going to Adelaide because he's been banished from Surf Village. So that's the only other place that's inhabited in the opening area of the map that you have access to. So that's the only other place you can go, is Adelaide. And next we have Cecilia. Cecilia's prologue openings chapter is she's at an abbey, a mage school, a Hogwarts, and she's learning magic. She is the princess of Adelaide Castle, and all princesses of Adelaide have to go to this magic school to learn magic. And then you end up learning that she's actually the chosen one, the innocent one, the one who could speak to the guardians. And so she uses her mystical MacGuffin relic called the Teardrop. The Teardrop. She uses the mystical relic called the Teardrop to open a dungeon, and you get to go through the dungeon. It's an abandoned library. Lots of library. And that's one thing I really love about this game. There's one thing I really love about some of these games that usually have these big bookcases, and there's a thing that I always wanted to do in these JRPGs is go up to a bookcase, click it, and there's actually something that you can read off of the bookcase. Well, in Wild Arms, that's exactly what happens. When you find a bookcase in any house, in any building, in any dungeon, you can interact with that bookcase, and there's a book that you could read. That happens in Dragon Quest VIII as well. That's my favorite game of all time, and I loved that idea where you could find books to read about that. So Wild Arms has that. You can read books, this big library, like dozens of bookcases. You could read about the 1,000 year ago war and all of that information, learn about the elves, learn about the demons, the robot, aliens from outer space, and you get to learn about all the arms, the guardians, the teardrop. You can learn about all of these things in this secret, lost, forgotten library at the Hogwarts Castle Abbey thing. And so she learns about all of that stuff, and she finds the Guardian, and now she has to go on a quest. She's the chosen one. The game technically is Cecilia's game. Technically, she is the main character, even though Rudy is the protagonist. He's not really the focal point. He's kind of like Chrono in a Chrono Trigger. Chrono is kind of just there, he's kind of just wandering around, but it might be more of Marley's story, Marl and Luca's story, and all that stuff, and he's just kind of along for you could see the Chrono Trigger inspirations all over the game, all over. It's Chrono Trigger everywhere. And so Cecilia becomes the chosen one in this aspect, and she goes back to Adelaide Castle because she's done. She's graduated being a magician and all that stuff, and now she can go back to doing the princess thing, being a princess of Adelaide Castle. So all three converge on Adelaide Castle, and I went on this 10 to 15 minute long tirade just to tell you the first dialogue box that Rudy has. Now, you know, if you remember that part earlier where I was ranting about how Rudy should not have been a silent protagonist and how he probably had a bunch more dialogue boxes that later on in the development stage someone decided let's make him a silent protagonist instead, so let's delete all of his text boxes, but they forgot to delete all of them. This one text box is one of those text boxes that they forgot to delete. You get access to these 3 characters. They're separate characters. They're not in a single party yet, but you can have access to all 3 of them at once. If you press the start button, it opens up 3 character boxes, one for each of these characters: Jack, Rudy, and Cecilia. And so wherever they are on the map, like if you press start and go to Jack is currently at Memory Temple, and if you run Jack into Adelaide Castle and go to the save point, and then press start and swap over to Cecilia, and you run back and run to Adelaide Castle to the save point marker, you'll find Jack standing there. She'll find him standing there, and you could click to talk to Jack like you would talk to any other NPC, and Jack will have something to say to you, right? And if you have Rudy run to the save point in Adelaide Castle, and you have Cecilia talk to Rudy will have something to say to you. He has dialogue. It's almost like he was written to be a talking character prior to. So, all that out of the way. There's another one. There's another text box that Rudy has. Far later on in the game, when you go to a place called Volcanentier, I'm not writing down the names of all these things. I'm not pulling out 25 pieces of paper with all these terms and all this stuff. Play the game yourself, alright? And there's a place called Volcanentier, a dungeon. You go there, and some shenanigans happen. And Rudy rescues an NPC called Calamity Jane. He rescues her. There's kind of like some romantic tension between these 2 characters. That plotline's never resolved in the game, by the way. There's a lot of unresolved plot lines in this game. It almost feels like they ran out of money and they ran out of time, so they had to rush the game to completion. They probably had a lot more they wanted to do here, which is why they remade the game a couple of years later with a bigger budget. Once Wild Arms 2 and 3 were far more successful, they had a bigger budget to remake Wild Arms 1. So they went back and remade Wild Arms 1 for the PS2, putting all the things that they wanted to put into 1 into the remake, such as Calamity Jane becoming a playable character. She was just a prominent NPC in the original game. So Calamity Jane goes into this dungeon with Rudy and the rest for treasure hunting. She wants the treasure, and Rudy and the rest want to find the plot MacGuffin there. And once they find the plot MacGuffin, the dungeon starts to crumble. It starts to cave in and all that stuff. And one of the rocks from the ceiling starts to fall on Calamity Jane, and Rudy jumps and saves Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane, she's not exactly grateful. She yells at Rudy, and Rudy basically says, "Well, excuse me, princess." He doesn't exactly say that, but it's basically exactly what he said. And that's the only other line of dialogue that Rudy has through the entire game. But they constantly make allusions to how Rudy feels, or they make allusions to say, "Oh, Rudy told me all about you, Calamity Jane. He said how you're such a caring and thoughtful person." And I'm like, when did he do that? The boy never talks. But apparently he does. Apparently he does. Just off screen. But yeah, that's a little bit of a point of contention for me that I had to spend 20 minutes going over to say that I think Rudy should have been a talking protagonist rather than a silent one, because it just feels like he was made to be a talking protagonist. He never should have been a silent protagonist. It doesn't work in this game, him being a silent protagonist. It doesn't work. He feels like a side character. He feels like he's just there to be there. The main characters are Cecilia and Jack. They're the ones who actually have dialogue. They're the ones who have story. Things happen to them. They react to things. And Rudy's just standing there. He's just standing there. Yappity, 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 yappity. What do you think, Rudy? Great input, Rudy! And, yeah. Well, how's the combat, though? How's the actual gameplay? Well, the gameplay is actually pretty interesting. It's turn-based, just like Final Fantasy, just like Chrono Trigger, and you have 3 very different characters. Jack is a swordsman with high attack, moderate HP, and crappy defense, high agility. He's like a mixture of a thief and a fighter class combined together, but scrap the high defense of the fighter in favor of the stats of a thief, but the attack of a fighter. That's kind of what Jack is. So you're going to have to constantly heal him or give him good gear because his defense isn't that great. You're going to want to put some stuff in there to boost his defense up so that he can actually tank some attacks. His HP is going to be the second lowest. Rudy's HP is the highest. He can tank attacks. He's great at that stuff. Rudy attacks with a dagger. That's his basic attack. So his attack's not going to be as high as Jack's. But what Rudy does have are arms, the guns. So if you give him, he comes with one automatically, and you can collect a few others throughout dungeons. And most of these are missable, so you're going to want to have a guide handy, or you're just going to want to explore every nook and cranny of a place before you get to the boss fight and leave the dungeon. You're going to want to know where these things are before you leave so that you never get to come back there. So if you never get to come back there, you collected everything that you needed from the place. Every arm after the starting arm is found in a dungeon, found in a chest. You have to pick it up from the chest, and most of these places you can't revisit again where the arms are. And you use the gun, and that's his special ability. He doesn't have any magic, he doesn't have any of that. He just fires guns or uses his dagger to attack normally. And you can find arm technicians in various towns who can upgrade your arm for a price. This costs quite a lot of gold, so you're going to want to farm quite a lot of gold. Or you could do this trick. This is the item glitch trick. It's an item duplication glitch. And what this does is it multiplies an item to maximum capacity through a simple little trick. You enter a battle when you have all three of your characters in your party. You have Rudy use a heal berry on himself. Then you have Jack use a heal berry on Rudy as well. And then for Cecilia, you go to the item menu and you select the heal berry, but you do not use it. You select it. Then you scroll down to find an item that you only have one of. One. It won't work if you have anything more than one. It has to only have one item. So you select the heal berry, but you don't use it, you select it. And then you scroll down to find the item that you only have one of, and you select that. And it will swap places, right? It'll swap. And then cancel out of the item menu and select guard, defend. It's the big shield icon, you can't miss it. You select defend, and Cecilia will defend for that turn. And then all you gotta do is finish the battle. At the end of that battle, if you go to your item menu, you'll find that the item that you swapped the heal berry with now has 255 of that commodity. If you happen to do this for an item that is very expensive when you sell it, you won't have any issues with gold for the rest of the game. Normally, I don't like to do too many of these cheats because I like to play the game normally. But if a game gets grindy like this, the only thing you're saving is time. Literally, that's the only thing you're saving. If you're just going out there, killing an enemy, getting some gold, going out there, killing an enemy, getting some gold, spending about 5 to 10 hours doing that just for the gold to upgrade your arm, then do this trick, because all you're saving is time. You're not really skipping a gameplay mechanic or learning how to strategize in battle or anything like that. You're just skipping time. You're saving time. Just trust me, in the final battle, all the maxed out arms, they're just going to do typical damage. Your physical damage is probably going to out-damage some of these arms eventually, even after maxing them out. So it's fine. You're not going to be overpowered OP as heck by maxing out these arms using this trick. So keep that in mind. And then there's another trick that you can use that glitch on as well. And there are items that will boost your stats. The Power Apple, the Hardy Apple, the Agile Apple, and the Mystic Apple. And all the items are based on fruits and stuff. These apples will boost one of your stat points permanently. If you find one of them, and you use the item duplication glitch on it, you will boost that one item to 255. You can use that across your characters as many times as you want. Again, I recommend against this. You'll make the game a little bit too easy, but if you just want to experience the game, if you just want to experience the story, then go ahead and do that trick. You can go ahead and do that trick. And trust me, for a lot of the super bosses, you're going to want to do this trick, especially with an item called the Ambrosia. This is the only item that is a multi-healing item. Because magic-wise, there's a lot of limitations with Cecilia. She never really learns a healing ability that targets the whole party. In most Final Fantasy games, Chrono Trigger games, you would have a healing spell that targets the whole party to heal them. Unfortunately, she doesn't have that. She has a heal item which heals one party member, or she has a high heal, which also heals one party member for more HP. No, party team healing ability. So let's say an enemy uses an attack that deals high damage to all three of your characters. Cecilia only has a spell to heal one of you, so the other two are kind of boned in case the boss decides to use the exact same all three targeting attack the very next turn. One of you is probably going to survive because you healed, but the other two are done. They're done, so they're gone. They're dead. So yeah, I recommend using the item duplication glitch on the Ambrosia. The Ambrosia is kind of a cheat as well, because it basically functions as a mega elixir from the Final Fantasy games. So does that mean? It means you can heal your entire party for full HP and also gets rid of all status ailments. Well, since it's the only item that heals all three of your party members, I don't feel too bad using it, because the game doesn't have other ways naturally to heal your entire party, like the normal way of Cecilia using a spell to do this. It's just the Ambrosia that can do this. So that's very unfortunate that the spells are so limiting like this. I wish there were more spells that Cecilia could learn so that we can customize maybe and have a multi-targeting ability like this. I really feel like that should have been added into the game, but since it wasn't, maybe it's in the remake. I don't know about that, but in the original, there is no multi-targeting spell, so just multiply the Ambrosia to 255 and use that when you need to heal your entire party. Trust me, it's gonna save you a lot of aggravation, If you're one of those people who are just stubborn as all heck and you want to play the game normally, then expect to add about 20 to 30 hours to your playtime, especially if you plan to beat all of the super bosses. You're gonna be here a while. And most of the time you're spending is just grinding. You're just gonna fight a battle, fight it again, and again, and again. Numbers go up again, 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 and again, and again, and again, and again. Level up again, 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 again. Level up again, 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 again. Get rolled again, again, again. Level up again, again. That's JRPGs for you. It really is. It's JRPGs for you. That's the one thing that I really don't like about JRPGs is the grinding. You know, if I can skip the grind and just keep everything else the same, I'll be fine with that. And so these are ways that you could skip the grind. And so keep those in mind for future playthroughs if you ever plan to play the original Wild Arms. That's an actual natural exploit. It's not something you use a code breaker, game shark, save, or anything like that. No, it's naturally in the game to exploit. And since it's naturally in the game, I don't feel bad using it. What else can we talk about Wild Arms with? Well, the actual world map is mostly desert. There's some forests and villages. The actual story is that the planet is dying. It's just naturally dying. And there's some sort of religious aspects here, kind of Shintoistic. But that's kind of natural because it's a Japanese RPG, and with Japan and Shinto, it kind of goes hand in hand. It's kind of understandable, how here's this place and we kind of lost touch with our spiritual side, and all of the guardians that we used to pay homage to, they're kind of getting weaker, and our planet's kind of getting losing some gusto. We need to get back to nature. And maybe the guardians will have some gusto, and maybe our planet will get some gusto back into it as well. So that's basically just what the message is trying to say. We have lost touch with the guardians. 1,000 years ago, we used to be in touch with the guardians, but now we've lost touch with the guardians. We need to get back into touch with the guardians. Because it's kind of like the more people who venerate an aspect of one of these guardians, that guardian will be stronger. And a game mechanic here, there's only one guardian in the whole game that's strong enough to physically manifest, and that is the guardian Lucade, the guardian of desire. And again, like I said, Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and some Zelda vibes and Trigun vibes for these two. But Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger are the two big things I think Wild Arms took the most nods from. Because there's a character in this game called Boomerang, and his dog companion is the guardian Lucade. Lucade is just the dog. He doesn't really talk. I think he can talk if he wants, but he doesn't. And Lucade just is Boomerang's companion. Boomerang is a ninja type of villain. He is one of the 4 demon lords, and he lives for battle. That's all Boomerang has. Boomerang's insanely strong desire for combat is what fuels Lucade's existence. Lucade gets to physically manifest and live forever through Boomerang's desire for battle. And they have this big faithful companion dog and ninja companion, loner ninja, anti-hero thing going on. Boomerang's basically Shadow. He's basically Shadow. It's just, and there's no getting around it. He's basically Shadow, and Lucade is basically Interceptor. Like I said, Final Fantasy VI is a big inspiration for Wild Arms. You know, the world of ruin aspect and how the world is all dying and all that stuff, that's kind of Phil Gaia. And how the world of balance is all nice and green. That was kind of how Phil Gaia was 1,000 years ago. It's basically, I'm telling you, Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, come on. You'll see it when you play this game. You'll see it. But yeah, there's not too much I can now say. I'll probably add another 30 minutes to an hour if I continue talking about Wild Arms in this type of pedantic and over-explanatory way. So I'm just going to simplify the rest of this here. The combat is very simplistic. I like that. I don't like a lot of gimmicks to my games. I don't like a lot of nickel-nackle, kind of like how Sabin in Final Fantasy VI had buttons that you gotta press in a certain order. I didn't really care for that. And how Legend of Dragoon had quick time events for their special abilities. I didn't really care for that either. Let me talk about Jack's special abilities. That's one thing I kind of skipped over. Jack has a thing called Fast Draw. And what Fast Draw is basically swordsman techniques. Jack has magic points just like Cecilia, and his Fast Draw techniques use up magic just like Cecilia's spells do. Rudy has no spells, he just fights with an arm. Arms use a thing called bullets, and you will run out of ammo eventually, so you'll have to get bullet clips or go to an arm technician to refill your bullet clip ammo. And the ammo is not too expensive. Ammo for every single type of gun is just 10 gold each, so you just go back to town and refill whenever you need to. Jack's force abilities are kind of annoying. He starts out with 1, and a lot of his force abilities are missable, just like Rudy's arms. I found in dungeons that you can only visit once. A lot of Jack's force draws are found on these statues of swordsmen. And you go to a statue of a swordsman, oftentimes in a dungeon that you only visit one time. You go to the dungeon, you find the statue of a swordsman, you have Jack talk to it, and this swordsman will put Jack through a trial. Oftentimes just a random battle with just Jack by himself. You kill the enemies with Jack by himself, and he'll learn a hint for a fast draw technique. What does this hint mean? It means when you go to Jack's fast draw list of techniques, you'll have the learned techniques with all the names, and then you'll have one that's just question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. And you have to click that, and you have to use that in battle. And it's a random number generator. Again, RNG elements, luck of the draw, RNG luck, for him to learn the technique. And if he fails to learn the technique that turn, he'll just attack normally when you select question mark. So you have to keep selecting it over and over and over again to eventually have him learn the technique. It's not just automatically learning the ability. You learn a hint, and then you have to apply it in battle until he eventually learns the technique. It can be very annoying, because it could just take one battle and he'll learn it, or it could take 50. It all depends on your luck and the RNG luck. And for me, I had bad luck for a couple of these. It took a very long time to learn a couple of these. There is a hidden mechanic that might influence how quickly you could learn these techniques. Luck. Luck is a skill that you cannot really manipulate too often. There's only one way to manipulate luck in battle, and that is through the item called the small flower. And I tried using the item duplication glitch on the small flower. It doesn't work. It didn't work for me. So unfortunately, the small flower has to be collected gradually, normally, through the normal way, and that's kind of very annoying. It's very annoying. But using this item will increase your luck temporarily. You have best, good, normal, poor, worst. The 5 tiers of luck. If your luck is worst and you use a small flower, you'll go from worst to bad. And then if you use the small flower again, you'll go from bad to normal. If you use the small flower again, you'll go from normal to good, and then good to best. So it'll take 5 small flowers to go from worst to best, and your luck will gradually change as the battle goes on. I don't know what factor, what hidden game mechanic changes or modifies your luck, but I often notice how a character could have best luck stat on their character status screen, and then after leaving a dungeon, going somewhere else, that best turns to normal. Go somewhere else, normal is now good. Go somewhere else, that good is now worst. I have no idea what influences this. I have no idea the hidden mechanics. There's a lot of hidden mechanics and hidden numbers in a lot of these games. I'm often interested in finding out what those hidden mechanics are, but I just couldn't find them. I don't know what the hidden mechanic is to influence luck in this way. I just know using a small flower will raise your luck temporarily. And luck is often connected to how quickly Jack could learn a fast draw technique. If his luck is at worst, it might take forever to learn the technique. If his luck is at best, it could either take 1 turn or about 20 turns, but it won't take 100. It'll just take a few. And you want your luck to be at best when you're learning fast draw techniques. And most of the fast draw techniques are far physical based. They're not really like a lot of Cecilia's spells are like stat modifiers, like armor down, or speed up, shield up, or hyper, which is offense up, buffs, debuffs, status ailments. She has a couple attacks, like fire spell, earth spell, water spell, electric spell, or a holy spell, or a darkness spell, and all that stuff. She has those typical spells, right? Jack's attacks are kind of like just only offensive-based attacks. No buffs, no anything like that. He has one thing called the heal draw, which will heal a character, so he'll have the option to have the ability to heal a character. And unlike Cecilia, whose spells will always remain static cost, for example, use the healing spell and it'll cost 4 or 8 magic points to cast that spell. And Jack, for example, can have an attack called the Sonic Buster, which costs 8 magic points to use that ability in battle. Well, you can find an item called the Secret Sign. You don't get many of these, but you can get an infinite amount of these through doing tough battles in certain locations, as they're an enemy drop sometimes, or you can steal these from an enemy sometimes. And what the Secret Sign does is it lowers the MP cost by 1 point for any one of Jack's attacks. So if you, for example, get 7 Secret Signs and use all 7 on Sonic Buster, then Sonic Buster will go from requiring 8 MP to cast to 1 MP to cast. That's very fortunate. It's very good because some of Jack's best attacks can clear out an entire room of enemies in 1 turn, and they're often going to cost like 20 MP to cast. So if you get 19 Secret Signs, put all 19 into that super awesome attack, it'll only cost him 1 MP to use every turn. So definitely try to get as many Secret Signs as you can. If you want to cheat and use the item duplication glitch, it works on the Secret Sign. So do that if you want to blitz through grinding for Secret Signs, because that's all you're doing is saving time and grinding for Secret Signs. But the resource management really is like, oh, we need you to have a limitation on this item. You can grind for it near the end of the game, obviously, so during the earlier parts of the game, if you want a challenge, don't use the secret sign. Only use the secret sign after you get the airship. After you get the airship, then you can use the secret sign to put everything, the secret sign duplication glitch. Because by that point, you have access to get an infinite amount of secret signs, if you wanted to do so. All you're saving is the time. So, okay, you got that, got that in your head, got that done? Alright, that's 4 straws for Jack, that's Rudy's arms, and Cecilia's spells. Spells, let's talk about spells. You can't just buy spells. You have to collect an item called a crest graph. This item, I just recommend duplicating it, just duplicating one of them to have 255 of them. Because, well, they're just spells, and a lot of them aren't really going to be game-breaking or anything like that. You have access to all the spells at once. You just pick and choose which one you want to put a crest graph onto. For example, you go to a mage shop in a town, and if you have, like, say, 2 crest graphs with you, right, you go to the mage shop, and the mage shop will open up this little tier of 4x4 graph. So you have 16 spells to choose from here on this basic spells list. You have 2 crest graphs. You can unlock any of these 16 spells. There's no charge, there's no cost. You can pick any of these spells. And you click it, then you have access to 2 of the 16. Then you gotta get 14 more crest graphs to unlock the other 14. There's really no advantage outside of saving time. Like I said, you just save time if you use the item duplication glitch to give yourself 255 crest graphs so that you can unlock all 16 spells right away. You're not going to get a specific advantage because, again, you could go back to the mage shop. If you had 2 crest graphs, you go back to the mage shop and say, hey, I don't want these 2 spells anymore. They'll erase the spells and give you 2 crest graphs back, so you can pick 2 different spells. You can keep going back and pick and choose and pick and choose and pick and choose, or you can just get all 16 and not have to do that. I chose to get all 16, so I don't have to do that. But you can do that if you want. You can do that if you want. But yeah, that's combat. I have nothing else to say. I've sarcasted myself out. I'm all sarcasted out. But that's Wild Arms. I don't think the story is better than Xenogears. I don't think the story is better than Final Fantasy. I don't think it's better than Chrono Trigger. I don't think it's better than Alundra. But I don't think it's fair at the same time to compare it to those games. It really does stand on its own, even though it's inspired by things like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI. What wouldn't be? Those are 2 juggernaut RPG titles that inspired lots of things. They're like the Metallica of JRPGs, 80s Metallica of JRPGs. You could look at a bunch of metal bands today and say, hey, thrash metal inspired bands, and you go like, hey, these guys kind of have little Metallica vibes in their music. And you go, were they inspired by Metallica? You go to Google and Google it, and they go, yeah, this band was inspired by Metallica. And you'll find that a bunch of people were inspired by Metallica. A bunch. And that's kind of what Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger are. They're the Metallica of JRPGs. A bunch of people get inspired by them, and they make things kind of like those 2. They just take elements, and they put they sprinkle those elements in. They say, oh, this is our game, but it's kind of very similar. But we have and that's basically it. Wild Arms stands on its own. It's a very fun time. It can get dark. Yeah, that's one thing I do want to say. It can get really dark. Near the beginning of the game, you can go to a festival in Adelaide. This big festival with a bunch of mini games that you can play. It's kind of like the Chrono Trigger festival that you can go to at the Beginning Kingdom area. You can go to this festival in this big town and see all sorts of cool stuff and to play all sorts of mini games and all that stuff. It's exactly the same thing as that. So again, like I said, Chrono Trigger inspirations. So you can go to this thing, right? And there's tons of child NPC characters running around. Tons of kids playing video games, and there are tons of kids playing the stalls and the games and all that stuff. And naturally, it's a festival. You're going to find a lot of kids there. And then the demons attack. and you swap perspective to Jack and Rudy, and they're looking for the princess, and there are bodies everywhere. The city is on fire. The buildings have holes in the roofs. Everything's in ruins, and there are bodies everywhere. Children's bodies. You walk up to a child's body. You click the X button to interact, and you'll get a text box saying, "No movement. She's dead." And there are tons of bodies all over the town. And you have to attack and defeat all of the demons, find some scattered survivors, and try to rescue what few people you can. It is very dark. It really hits you right in the head. Because the first part of the game, it's very lighthearted, fun, and fun adventure, whimsical. And then you get hit with this and you realize, damn, this is war. This is war. And you're now motivated to get revenge for what happened to these people. That's great. I don't often see too many RPGs that have that in there, where you can actually really get to experience the pain of loss like that. You know, losing Aerith in Final Fantasy VII, that was a pretty big thing, but this kind of hits you, right? It really hits you. The plate falling in Final Fantasy VII, the Midgar 7, the Sector 7 plate falling in Sector 7. You don't really get to actually be in Sector 7 and interact with all the corpses and all that stuff. They didn't really do that. This one puts you right there, surrounded by bodies. It is dark. Wild Arms is a great 7 out of 10 for me. I recommend you play it, but maybe play the remake. But the original's still good.